Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I am your host, Brad Whipple, and this is our interview series from a certain point of view, where we chat with those who create in a galaxy far, far away. On this episode, our guest is an award-winning writer and author of children's books, including her latest project, Never Look Back. Her writing has also appeared in numerous publications, such as the Washington Post and the New York Times. Today, we talk plenty about her latest short story, Beyond the Clouds, which appears in From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back, as well as her roots in entertainment journalism and why she's such a huge fan of Rogue One. So, without further ado, let's head right over to my interview with author Lilliam Rivera.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
Super thrilled and honored today to be joined by yet another newcomer to the Star Wars galaxy in terms of publishing. This is just so exciting. Lilliam Rivera, welcome to Friends of the Force, and congratulations on writing your first Star Wars. It must be super exciting for you.
Oh, it was, and thank you so much for inviting me to talk about it. It was a big deal for me, for sure.
I can't imagine how big of a secret it feels like to carry that for so long, and then to, over the summer reveal you'd be working on it. Now to have the book out on bookshelves, what's been the initial reaction that you've seen online? What does it feel like to have your words on the page and to have your name on the front of a Star Wars book?
Oh man, I just want to say, like, when I first got the email asking for me to be a part of it, I think I screamed.
That's the appropriate reaction.
Right. I mean, right. That's what people do. And then it was, because it was through my agent. So my agent forwarded to the request, and I was just like, oh my God. But then, that's like over a course of so many months ago. And then I couldn't tell anyone. And so then that was really the challenge, because I have friends who we talk about, like, we've seen the movies, we make a big deal of going to see the recent movies, we dissect it, we analyze, we argue. And so I couldn't even tell them anything until very close to, like, okay, it's going to happen. And then I'm just like, all right, I just need to tell you guys this is happening. And then they're like, what? Like, what? Like, how dare, like, how can you hold this in for so long? And I was just like, I had to, because I don't know what was going to happen. These Star Wars people, they're serious.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's so exciting, though, because I love From a Certain Point of View, and I'm glad we've gotten yet another one of these books. And Empire Strikes Back, I think, is often, renowned as one of the best films of the saga, just for what it did and how it kind of expanded on the first movie. But I want to hear from you. What is your history as a Star Wars fan, and how has it influenced you growing up, personally or professionally?
Yeah, when Star Wars came out, I was really young. When the first Star Wars came out, I was really young, but I remember I grew up in the Bronx, and we were always broke and poor. So we couldn't go to, like, big blockbuster movies. So then when Star Wars came out, I just remember that feeling of, like, all these other kids talking about it. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And also I'm so sad, because I couldn't participate in that wonder until way later. So when Empire Strikes Back came around, that was the first movie that I was able to see on the big screen. And then I was really in awe of it. So it's by far my favorite of the saga because of that, right? Because it was the first time that I was able to really understand what everyone was talking about, what all my friends were talking about, because I was like, I don't know what you mean. But I was just like, okay, now I get it, and I'm fully invested in this world. So it's like a big deal for me to be a part of it. And it really is by far my favorite movie, because I will rewatch it and rewatch it again, because this was it. Like, I would watch the first one, Star Wars, and then I'll watch Empire, because it's like literally all about it, and it's darker.
Yeah, we love a darker middle chapter,
right? You're just like, it's gonna, we know it's gonna be resolved, but right now we don't know. So it's just like the tension of it, it's by far my favorite. And so I'm so happy that I even to get to play around in that world.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that was your first movie going experience with Star Wars, and then now to actually be writing a new original character within that film so many years later. I imagine it's almost surreal.
It's so surreal, and just I can't even. I think the best part about it too was when they made that announcement, when we finally were able to show the table of contents and all the authors, because everyone's like in top secret. So then for me to be able to share this moment with a lot of other Latinx authors who I know and love, that to me also made it that much more like a family moment, right? Because I was like, oh, here I am with Daniel Jose Older, with Zoraida Cordova, with Marco Shiro, and we're all, I love those guys, and now we're like, oh, we're part of this, and that to me was really kind of very magical for me.
Yeah, I remember when you initially tweeted about it, I was reading through some of the comments because that was just such a lovely day to go through each of the authors' posts and see. And I remember like you and Zoraida kind of freaking out back and forth, and people were popping in, and you guys were just so excited. And I was like, yes, this is exactly what these projects are for. And like to just bring in new authors and have so many different authors collaborate on this thing and just get so excited over it. It's just so refreshing and like very needed in Star Wars, especially because I think for so long Star Wars was one thing, and now it gets to be an entirely new thing in the Disney era, and that's just really exciting.
Yeah, it's quite a moment to be a part of it, because we're all excited. Like I'm excited to see Diego Luna. I'm excited to see Pedro Pascal and all these film,
Yes.
Mandalorian. So I'm pumped up. So for me to be even in anywhere near any of those things,
Yeah.
is like I'm a part of it. I don't care. Like I'm in the conversation.
Listen, those two guys are kind of carrying the face of the franchise on their backs right now. It's pretty awesome to see because Mando, and then I imagine the Cassian series will come out next, and we'll probably have those back to back at some point. That's a complete guess.
Oh my God. I can't
and I love both of
even
those
imagine.
guys.
I mean, we'll all just be dying because that's also another movie that I love was Rogue One, right? And so,
Yeah.
and it's such it was such an argument among my friends because they were like, no. And I was like, yes. So it's just so funny to be like such big, huge fans of it. And also just to see all these other authors who are part of it too, like Charles Yu and these big names that I know so well that are able to contribute to this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've come so far in your writing career. You've written plenty, middle grade novels, young adult novels, anthologies. You've written a lot for different publications, which is awesome. I loved reading some of your stuff the last couple days. What has your career been like as a writer? Like, when did you initially know this was something you wanted to do and get into and really invest your heart and soul into?
Well, my background was in journalism first. So I was an entertainment and fashion journalist for a long time. And that's literally how I left New York and moved to LA because I was doing entertainment journalism. And if you really want to write like science fiction or any kind of speculative world, you just have to be in the entertainment industry because they are literally living in a whole completely different world that's very surreal and very disturbing. So that's how I started my writing. Like I've written young adult books and started off with, I've done contemporary, and I've been leaning more into speculative or more magical realism or a little bit of horror. So it was really fun to be able to dig into like science fiction, which is another one of my my favorite things that I like to read. So so it's it took me a moment because I really was fully into being a journalist. But after a while, I was like, I didn't enjoy it as much, but I knew in the back of my head, I wanted to be an author. I was just really scared to do it. And so when I eventually overcame that fear slowly. And it's been great. I love writing books. I love writing all kinds of stuff. So I try to do as many different things as possible. So it was kind of fun to be able to dig into like science fiction for the first time in a way.
Yeah. Do you feel any of those skills that you developed as a journalist, because it is such a different medium, right? And then going into speculative fiction, I guess what skills have you been able to bring over that allows you to build out these worlds even more that you're writing in and exploring the depth of the characters that you're creating?
Well, I think it's the same as everything. Like with all of my projects, is I really rely a lot on research, and no matter if it's a contemporary story or a retelling of a Greek myth, I really come into any kind of project with this idea of I'm going to research it. I'm going to incorporate some sort of history or folklore that's from from whatever Caribbean or Latin American or whatever it is. So. Those kind of skills, I've always come to any project with that, in mind, because to me, that's what I love. I love to learn about new things and try to discover new worlds and new history, and history that may be overlooked. And so coming into Empire Strikes Back, it was the same sort of mentality, because here was a place, that Cloud City, which is, if you look at the movie, it's not hugely explored. You get like maybe 2 or 3 different places or settings, and then that's it. And I was just like, and I would zoom in countless times to see like, wait, what are they wearing? Like, and so it was, but it was fun to just even do that, like just go into the research, even if it was Wikipedia or anything. Like I was just like, what, any kind of fan illustrations, like what are people thinking about, and all those things, or words or slang.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun. Like I could really fall deep into that, that black hole of just researching.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, let's get right into your story. So you wrote Beyond the Clouds, which is in the later part of the book when we are at Cloud City finally, and it follows the character of Isabalia, who she's a wannabe bounty hunter. She loves Boba Fett. She's a huge fan of his. She's hoping to get her dream meeting with him, but you bring up the concept first and foremost of Cloud City, and I think that's something unique about your story is it presents a side of this location that we've never seen, more of like an almost societal class structure between, the lower workers of Bespin, maybe the Ugnaughts. We see how do you say his name is Rensello? I think it is. Recnello? Yeah.
Yes, that's the way I would say it.
Yeah. So we see kind of what he goes through, and then we see the more underground bar gambling scene, like Boba Fett's in the room, he's kind of watching all the magic happen in there, and then Isabalia is getting hired to do work and take down some people who don't want to work anymore, and there's this whole workers revolts, and people, they understand that they're the people who run Cloud City actually, and that was really cool storyline to see, like a worker strike in Cloud City during all this chaos. Why do you feel it was important to introduce that sort of side of Cloud City and something that's kind of almost rooted in our own reality in some ways?
Yeah. Well, I just kept thinking about this place where Lando always says that we're able to do things that detected under radar or whatever. They're doing like slides, see these side hustles and deals, and he's like, and it's Cloud City. Like to me, that seems really luxurious in a way. But I was just like, the things that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, we were only privy to what Han Solo and Leia were looking at, and they were being taken care of in a way. Lando was really kind of sheltering where they could go, or,
he was pampering them, honestly.
Right.
That
right?
nice
like
dinner table, come on.
Exactly. Like it was like pampering, clothes, whatever it is, but he's just showing a side, right? And so I just kept thinking like, oh, who are the people who are serving Han Solo and Leia the food? And who are these people who have to serve all these, dignitaries who show up? And I am always wondering about that, because if you read my books, there's always some sort of, social justice kind of theme that goes throughout my work. And also, and it's because, I grew up where I grew up, and I'm always super aware of who, these ideas of like, class issues and race and capitalism and all those big things. And so I'm sure that it would be happening in Cloud City as well. So I love this idea of Isabalia, who's like, obviously am kind of like attracted to and seduced by this idea of what Boba Fett is, right? I mean, she's never met
Yeah.
him. She just is like, well, if I do meet him, I know things will open up for me, and I'll be the person I'm meant to be somehow. Like she feels like she's lacking somewhere in her life, and all these people, all these other workers, you know, who are running Cloud City, who are making things, you know, run smoothly, are like this, you know, they're ready to break down the machine. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So to me, it's really like kind of a story of an awakening for Isabelia, who's like so lured by this idea of what, you know, kind of like what violence can buy in a way, and not really seeing that being a fighter really is being a fighter for the people, you know.
Yeah.
Fighting with your family, which is newfound family, you know. And so so it was kind of really fun to be able to, you know, who doesn't want a general strike? I'm like, if it's all going to go down, everything's going to go down.
Yes, absolutely. Tear it all down. Why not? And I do love that about the story, because yeah, identity is at the core of your story, and many of the other stories too. I think those are the ones that really resonate with me the most, is kind of that self-discovery of like, who do I want to be versus who I think I should, who I originally thought I should be. And your idea of who you should be might not always be the correct choice to make. And she does face that choice, you know, by the end of the story. But you mentioned that a common through line throughout your writing is social justice. And I was reading some other previous interviews with you, and you had asked that, you know, you approach all of your writing too from, you know, the lens of a Puerto Rican, Bronx native, and Latinx woman. What ways do you feel that those experiences of your upbringing and your environments really helped you to shape and draw inspiration for Isabelia's story?
Oh yeah, that's such a good question. You know, I mean, I guess I just think back of being really young and watching this film, and just, even though Princess Leia was white, obviously, but in my mind, I always imagined, you know, a brown girl in there. You know, I imagined them taking the lead, you know. And so then this here was my chance of being able to write just a character who's maybe at the beginning of this journey. Like I imagine Isabelia, like this is the start of her doing amazing things, courageous things, you know, overwhelmingly amazing, right? So I was just like, this is the start of her journey. And I love that idea that I could just plant a little seed of that, you know. And those are, to me, those are the kind of characters that I love, because I have a feeling, and in a lot of ways with Isabelia, is that she was written off, you know, like she was like, you know, she's having to do these kind of negotiations of like, well, if you put me in touch with Boba Fett, you know, I'll do this favor for you. And everyone knows, except for Isabelia, that Boba Fett's not gonna help you. Like, it's like, what are you doing? Like,
she's selling herself short, you know?
Right. And so there's that feeling of, and this is a very Bronx mentality, is that people think, oh, the Bronx, you know, they just write it off as a place that's full of poverty and crime and just the Yankees. and I'm like, and you know, I'm a product of that. And I know it's a beautiful, magical place. So for Isabelia, I needed her to, again, it's like that, the idea of awakening, of seeing your worth, you know, of being being a brown girl in space, and seeing that you are worthy of greatness.
Yeah. And we can go into spoilers too for the story, but I think one thing that really stuck out to me was her initially saying, poverty makes a person hungry, love can only get you so far. Then by the end of the story, she's like, do I choose the life with Boba Fett and having wealth and getting these new jobs, or do I choose joy? It's funny that the character's name is Joy, because it's like literally embodying a path for her that will be more joyful.
Right. And I think this is like, that's something that everyone goes through. And especially now, and during the times that we're living in. I mean, it's no, you know, it's not a coincidence that when I was writing these drafts, that there was literally an uprising occurring just 2 blocks away from my house.
Yeah.
You know, and that we're in a pandemic, and that, you know, all these things literally does feel like dark dark times, just like in Empire Strikes Back. So it just felt very almost cosmically connected.
Yeah.
I was writing that story at that very moment, at that time.
Yeah, and even Joy says that to her, be part of a real movement. Definitely struck a chord with a lot of people. I think there was a lot of education happening over the summer and
Mm,
with all the events that were happening, and a lot of people just going like, I've had enough, and
mm.
being a part of something larger than ourselves and joining together to like have this just outpouring of support. And it's just been a wild ride of a year, right? So to kind of see
Yeah.
that in the Star Wars universe was like, yeah, it struck a chord with me because we've seen how great it is to rally together and fight against people that try to oppress us and force us to lead a way of life that's only good for a few people.
Right. And this was something that, I'm Puerto Rican. And so like a summer ago or a year ago was the same thing was happening in Puerto Rico, that they were joining in an uprising to make sure that their governor resigned because he was caught doing a lot of terrible things. And so, and I watched that, and I watched like family and friends going to the island and joining that uprising. And I was in awe, and that was something that just stayed with me. And I always was I even wrote an essay about it for the Washington Post. And I was just like, we can do, this could happen here,
Yeah.
that's the island, that's, people can do this. And so I guess that must have been really just percolated in my mind for a while when I was writing this story. And it was just amazing that I got to do it. I feel really lucky.
Yeah.
I was able to.
It's great seeing Isabelia take a point in time where she could be opportunistic, but then all of a sudden she kind of feels like bantha crap because she knows it's not the right thing, right? The phrase that comes to mind is "at what cost," and
Yes.
I'm very happy to see her, choose the right path. I was consider me very shocked when she just threw the blaster at the stormtrooper. I was like, whoa. I was like, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is like, I love that moment. I think we were talking about fashion with when someone else had a lot of fashion stuff. And I was just like, because my background was in fashion, I was just like, oh yeah, that's going to be a big deal for her, because it is literally like a coat of arms in a way. Like, oh, if I wear this uniform, if I dress this certain way, then people will respect me. And it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's your actions, right? It's your actions. It's what you do.
Absolutely. One of your other key takeaways, I think, from the story is to never meet your heroes. So,
isn't that the truth? I mean, luckily
yeah.
I haven't had that happen that many times in my life, but I'm like, yeah, it's never a good thing.
Why do you think that is, and why do you think that was sort of integral to Isabelia's story?
I think it's because we put so much emphasis on people being perfect, and no one is perfect. Everyone we all have our flaws. And so then I'm always weary of like, oh, this person is great. And that's just probably my New Yorker attitude too. But I'm just like, I don't believe it. I'm like, I don't trust anyone. But is that mentality of like, everyone wants a person to be completely perfect in every certain way. And then when they fall or they trip, you're just like, oh, there, and I'm like, it's not possible.
Yes. Do you think that's a common thing that we've seen in other parts of Star Wars? Because I personally do. I mean, my mind jumps right to Rey meeting Luke, in The Last Jedi, because he's not what she expects him to be based on the legends of old. And I get where Luke's at. He's a little bit depressed. He's drinking milk out of a bottle, and questionably. And it's kind of one of those instances where it's like, our heroes are fallible, and they can fail, and they can be down in the dumps, and they're not perfect. You can't put so much expectations on these people that we put on pedestals. But do you see that as being an important concept in Star Wars, even in that kind of context, or others that you've seen?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if you look at Rogue One and Diego Luna, like his character, he, it was really fascinating for me because he was doing some really questionable things at the beginning. And you're just like, wait, where does he land? And it's never that clean. It's never I'm a good person. I mean, people are complex, and
Yeah.
they make decisions and they make bad decisions, and sometimes they course correct, and so then that's honestly, that's what we all do. Like I've messed up many times, and
Hmm.
I feel like, I want to have the opportunity to change. And so that's my thing is with Isabelia, is that she has this opportunity, and it really is that path of which path do you choose, and letting go of that, this idea of like you can control the outcome, you know
Hmm.
there's just there's only connections, and we only have connections, and really that's all we have. So I don't know, to me it was great to be able to play around with that, because I don't think anyone is good or bad. I mean, even Darth Vader, we saw,
Yeah.
we were able to see his origin story, and then we were also able to see how he got seduced.
Yes. Yeah. Even like a Kylo Ren too, right? I mean, we see
Yes.
how he's preyed upon by Snoke,
Mm,
and how he was pretty gaslighted in a way, and into thinking that he was one way when he really wasn't. And that's always tragic. Yeah, nobody's ever good or bad. It is more complex than that. And I think that's a really valuable thing, I think, for you to recognize, because I don't think everybody sees it that way. I definitely see it that way, and I always believe in redemption and atonement.
mm.
I think that's a
Yes.
very powerful concept, and one that we need to keep reinforcing throughout all of our stories.
Yes.
It does have a very, very special power.
I do. I agree. I mean, I think some people are unable to change, or don't want to change,
Yeah.
but I feel that a lot of, there are so many that do, and
Hmm.
and they might be incremental, little changes. So I really, if I see in Isabelia, is I see the hope of that, of change, the hope of what could happen if you choose otherwise.
Yeah, and that's a good disclaimer too. Not everybody is gonna fit that rule. There are some people out there in our real world who I think will never change, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
pisses us off to no end. But I want to ask you, for Isabelia, why do you feel it took her a bit to get to this point? Because I get the impression that when we start the story, she's been on this path for quite some time, because she's been waiting for Boba Fett to show up. How lucky she
Right.
is that the stars have crossed for him to show up in Cloud City. Why do you think it's this point in time for her that feels right to think about her choices versus previous points maybe in her life?
Mm. I mean, I feel like, and I don't know if you do, but I feel like that sense of there's like the world is changing. Like Cloud City something was brewing in Cloud City, and it was reaching a point, and I felt like that was what was happening with Isabelia and with her friend the Agna. Everyone, things were like converging to a moment where either it's gonna implode or explode, like there was that moment. And so I think that happens all the time in history. There's the moment where everyone's like, well, I have to make a decision,
Yeah.
and even now, like I think about all the group chats that I'm in with my close friends, and how I've changed my friends. My friendships have grown even deeper, even though we haven't seen them.
I'm with you.
And right, it's just a different kind of, like, we've grown deeper and more intimate, even though we're not even seeing each other. So there's
Hmm.
this moment of things are converging. And so
Yes.
that's how I feel like with Cloud City. It's right at that moment, like what we're feeling now, in our history right now.
The word that jumps to mind is inflection point.
Mm.
And I do think what really defines somebody is what you do at that inflection point. And I think we've definitely seen that this year. My good friendships have gotten stronger. The
Mm.
ones I realized weren't worth it have kind of left the table. But
Right.
it's kind of the reality of, how do people face the realities that we deal with in these crucial inflection points in our history? Yeah, you're so right. It's like, do you want to believe in science, or do you not? And then those
Right.
kinds of questions we have to ask ourselves. And for Isabelia, it was, do I want to do all these rough 'em up jobs forever? Or do
Right.
I want to stand for something that actually means literally anything that's important?
Right. Right. Is that really that moment of growing? It's in a weird way of her. I see her as really growing up, because there's this sense of like, this is what I've been doing. I've been studying all these bounty hunters, and I know inside out, and this is the moment, right? And I just feel like it's like a little kid just collecting trading cards,
Hmm.
just hoping that, oh, this is gonna be it, and I don't know, like it just was kind of really fun to be able to play around with with that idea, because
Yeah.
and that's the great thing about Star Wars and the great thing about Empire Strikes Back. It just kind of, you watch it and it still can resonate right now, to what's
Yes,
happening now.
absolutely. For you, what was the most challenging and rewarding aspects of writing this story?
The challenging part was always, I'm such a visual person, so it's really whenever I do a project, I always create a Pinterest board and I put a lot of images in there because it helps me trying to visualize
Hmm.
things, and I do research, and I really dig deep into it. And so with this short story, I did have I don't think I had a Pinterest board, but I saved images, as many as I could. But it's not as big. It's not as, it's not like the Millennium Falcon where you could get a map.
Yeah.
So there was challenging for me in and trying to envision where they live and what that looks like,
Hmm.
and the little places, it's small spaces that they are living in, and the idea of taking, a lift, what does that look like? All these things of just feeling the textural of it, like what things text, like how it would look and feel. And that was a hard part for me, I think. It was fun, but it was also a
Yeah.
little tricky.
How do you think that, from a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back, being such a huge fan of the movie for so long and having it hold such a close place in your heart, how do you expect fans to look at this movie differently, and what do you think will be some of the bigger takeaways? Because, it can be one of those things where you read it and you don't think about it much more beyond the surface level, or it's something that could dramatically change the way you see the film. I think there's different paths you could take, but
Yeah.
what do you see as the ultimate impact?
What I love about this, about being able to be a part of it, is that I get to have these we get to have this, like, our stories have a conversation with like three or four others who wrote in Cloud City, and so all these stories that are living, simultaneously or not, but are, have like found life in
Hmm.
this, in a part of a movie where it's not super long drawn out, like you only get to see, I mean, it's a big part, obviously, right? But it was just like, there's life outside of those like three spots, and that's really fun to be able to read those stories and, have an event with them. Like, it was last week, and we were just talking about all the mistakes that we all mutually made. And it was just funny. Like, we were like, okay, it's so much fun to be able to have that kind of like, oh, I'm adding to that conversation. So it would be cool to
Yes.
be able to watch it. I'm gonna be reading all the stories, and then I'm gonna rewatch it, obviously.
Yeah, I
'Cause
just did that today and it hit way different this time.
it did, right? Like, that's what I'm
Yeah.
waiting for. Like, I'm sure it's gonna be so different.
So to wrap up our interview, I'd love to ask some rapid fire questions, not a pop
Okay.
quiz, but just a way for you to maybe even talk about some things outside of the story or The Empire Strikes Back. So my first question for you is, it might already be the case, you already probably answered it, but your favorite Star Wars film, if it already is Empire Strikes Back, maybe a second or third favorite that really sticks with you.
Yeah, I mean, my first is Empire Strikes Back, but I've rewatched Rogue One many times. So
Yes.
it's literally, that's those, and it makes sense because they both are kind of dark. And and it's one of my favorites. I really love that film so much. So Empire Strikes Back first, obviously, but Rogue One for sure.
Those are in my top four as well. So I'm right with you. Rogue One's incredible. It was too good to us, truly.
I mean, I was crying at the
Yeah,
end, and I was just like,
same.
"Oh my goodness, they did this!" It was just the shock of it all was just so good.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Star Wars character or characters?
Oh, favorite Star Wars characters. I mean, I was always a Princess Leia person,
Yeah.
like most everyone, right? I really was. But, and I'm gonna shout out to Natalie Portman's fashion.
Yes. Yes, we love to see it.
Right? Because I don't think enough people understand how amazing it was. I got a paper cutouts. I remember when
Yeah.
they had these paper cutout, not even coloring, they were just cutouts, and it was all fashion of her fashion sense. And I was like, I live for this.
It's funny because I often feel like when Padme is marketed in things, they usually market her in the way that only shows off like one or two or three of her outfits, but I'm like, she's got like 30 outfits at least.
I mean,
like,
at
it's
least.
incredible. She's definitely my favorite outfit of hers is Revenge of the Sith, where she's got the thing on her head and it's in the shape of a rebellion symbol. I'm like, that is just so deep and meta. I can't even.
I mean,
like, it's just too good.
Amazing. Like they really went off on her fashion, and I'm like, I don't think
Yeah.
anyone like that was enough for me. Like I don't care about whatever the story, but it was like
Yeah.
fashion.
Shout out to Trisha Bagar. She's the costume designer in the prequels, and I hope she comes back to Star Wars one day
Oh my
because she's
God.
truly iconic.
I know we need more. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it was a little lacking. I mean, I
Yeah.
get it. We wanted to return to like kind of, dirty stuff, like the Tatooine kind of,
Yeah. Give
But
us
I'm
the
like,
regal wardrobe, all the dresses to go to the opera in and all that stuff.
I mean, give it to me.
Do you have a particular favorite Star Wars moment? I think we all have those, or we just can't wait to see certain parts, or anytime we think of Star Wars, it's the first image that pops into our head.
I mean, I definitely think it was when they go to the cantina. So my
Yeah.
thing is always like if it's like a music or a dance party or or a bar where there's a lot of different people all in there, then
Yeah.
that's where I want everything to slow down.
So you probably liked Canto Bight in The Last Jedi.
I did. I
Yeah.
love that. Are you kidding me? Like it's just I'm all about that. I'm like, oh, what else is happening? Like, what's the bar scene? What's the
I
those
still
are
think we
the
need a Star Wars musical, honestly. It
Oh
needs
my
to
goodness.
happen.
I mean, I'm surprised it hasn't happened on TikTok yet.
Maybe soon. Maybe we'll manifest it into the universe by saying it. So let's cross our fingers. Is there a project in the Star Wars universe that you're most excited for right now, and why?
Well, we talked about it. I'm waiting for Diego Luna to step out.
Yeah.
I'm really excited that he's going to come back because he's such a good actor. And so, with Mandalorian, like he has that helmet on, and and Pedro Pascal is beautiful, but also he's just he has a helmet on the whole time. So like, but
Just
with Diego,
named sexiest man alive, or one
I
of them
mean,
this
I'm
week.
just saying, I'm just even with the helmet on. And so then I'm really curious to see how Diego's new show works out. Like that to me, it'll be fun. I'm going to be tuning in for sure.
Do you have any hopes for it that, or maybe like story points that you hope they explore? Since you're such a big Rogue One fan, and I'm sure you probably have some sort of wishes for it.
I mean, I love this. I'm all about that kind of that origin stories. I love
Yeah.
those kind of moments because again, it's like that beginning of like we know the greatness, but right now he might not be that great. So I'm excited to see that kind of play out, and I always want more. I feel, and this might be lacking a little bit, but I want more family life.
Yeah. I hope we
'cause
see that the story
right?
behind I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. What does that look
Yeah,
like?
what does that look like? Exactly.
Yeah.
Like what kind of training are we talking about for these young kids? So this is a
Mhm.
completely different kind of lifestyle. So I'm super fascinated about that, and I
Yeah.
can't wait.
Listen, I just saw some footage. I don't know where somebody pulled it from, but it was of him inside of what looked like a hotel gym, and he said a Star Wars, and I just started crying because I was like, he is back. He's getting in shape. He is ready. He's working out a sweat. This guy's ready to fight the Empire, and I'm so excited.
I saw that because, of course, I think it was Zoraida who posted it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yes. I need to get into shape, too.
We all just need the snake on set so we can watch the mastermind at work.
I mean, come on, let's have that.
So my last question for you is, what does Star Wars mean to you?
Oh man. Star Wars means to me, it means the possibility. It means like magical imagination, the possibility of worlds out there. And and I have to share this one thing, which is so funny because I just thought of it. I was crying earlier today because the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico it's been around for 57 years. It's been used in films and X-Files episode, and it's being shut. It has to be demolished because of damage, and I just went to see it 2 years ago. So this idea of the stars and being able to connect somehow. Really, Star Wars is that onset, that little seed of what that might look like. And so I don't know, I'm just overwhelmed that I get to even write a little short story in that universe for someone who just was really desperately looking for stars,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know what? I think that's a great way to put it. And I'm sure the fact that we were able to talk about your story for almost 40 minutes it goes to show that it is deep, and it does explore some really profound concepts in Star Wars, and that is very exciting to now have your voice to tell that tale within Star Wars. So Lilliam, thank you so much again. Congratulations on your first official Star War. People are going to be so excited to continue reading it and exploring it. So yeah. My last question for you really is, where can people find you online, and what do you have coming up that we should be aware of?
Thank you so much again for asking me to do this. I really love just speaking about it. I'm just such a nerdy person. I feel like I'm a little kid, like giddy, trying not to be giddy. So,
listen, I think I know who I need to ask back for my Rogue One podcast.
I mean, I'm all in. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Lilliam R, and on Instagram, same at Lilliam R. And my book, I have a book that just came out a couple of months ago. It's called Never Look Back, and it's a retelling of the Greek myth Orpheus and Eurydice set in the Bronx. And it's a young adult book. But yeah,
awesome.
That's what I'm doing.
And you have a new Goldie Vance book coming out too. That's one of your middle grade novels. Yeah,
I do. It's a super cute mystery novel, and it comes out in January, which seems like so close, but I don't know.
We'll
Time
never
is
get
such
here.
a weird thing now.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Well, lots of exciting stuff for you. So once again, thank you for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Friends of the Force. Make sure wherever you do listen to leave a 5-star written review to help other people come into the Star Wars conversation and our Friends of the Force community. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can also help support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/Friends of the Force. Thank you to Anna, Cheryl, Christina, Deborah, Donnie, Elegy, Jessica, Marie Claire, Marvin, Neil, Rachel, Sarah, and T for being proud members of the Friends of the Force Patreon. That is it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time, may the Force be with you always.
Friends of the Force is a proud member of the Star Wars Escape Pods network. To learn more about our sister shows, find us on Twitter at We Are Escape Pods. The Star Wars Escape Pods network, promoting positivity in fandom.